So what's up? My name's Wes Spencer. I'm super excited to be chatting with you. I'm going to talk about a topic. Can we get a little hot takey today? Especially in the morning. Can we talk about some things that maybe frustrate us, that get on our nerves a little bit? Also, can we make fun of vendors a little bit? Is that okay? I can see Eric over there. He's like, yeah, let's go, baby. I'm a vendor, so I can do that, right? I can make fun of myself. You are an MSP, so you definitely can do that. But at the end of the day, it's less poking at vendors and much more about let's start getting to, I think, what really matters. And I want to talk about where I think we really struggle when it comes to cybersecurity. So let's kind of jump right in. I'm going to skip me since that's already been shared. How many of you have had or used or seen this very famous cybersecurity statistic? 60% of businesses that get hit by a cyber attack go out of business within 6 months. How many of us have shared this statistic before? I have. I'm guilty of it. So I decided, that's staggering. And in my days at Perch, we dealt with a lot of companies that went through pretty systemic cyber attacks. Some of you are in this room who you, as an MSP, have gone through some of these cyber attacks. Is your business still here? The fact that you're here probably says yes. So I was like, I'm going to chase the etymology of this. Where did this come from? Because to me, it just doesn't seem true. I'm not saying that cyber attacks aren't damaging. They're crazy damaging. I'm not saying they're not expensive. They are. I'm just saying when I look at the raw data, I struggle with this. So let's find out where this statistic came from, because the reality is it's not true. So where you first see it come up most recently, there's a senator named Lamar Smith. I think he's out of Tennessee. Any Tennesseans here? Is he even your senator anymore? No. Okay, he's gone. Good. I don't know anything about him other than this. He on the House floor used this statistic. And he said cybersecurity is important because 60% of businesses go out of business within 6 months when they get hit by a cyber attack. And so everyone's like, whoa, that's crazy, that's high, what do we do about that? And it definitely got buzz going, it got interest going. Well, where did Lamar Smith come up with this from? Well, best we can tell, the National Cybersecurity Alliance. They're the ones that quoted. He quoted them. So if I'm Lamar Smith, I'm thinking, well, that makes sense. I mean, this 60% stat comes from National Cybersecurity Alliance. It's got to be right. Well, if we chase and say, well, where did the National Cybersecurity Alliance get it from? Where did that come from? It actually comes quoted from, I think it's like a Denver Post newspaper article. It was written 3 years ago. I traced that one, and it was quoted from a much smaller newspaper article, from some no-name newspaper article, and from there it has no other beginnings. You see how easy this can happen? Literally, if we say some small newspaper article, maybe he was talking to some local person who just made the stat up on the fly, a bigger newspaper took it, National Security Alliance took it, Lamar Smith took it, and now here we all are all today literally taking a stat that's been made up. Now, why am I starting on a rant? I'll tell you why. Because it is fun. It's super fun. And it lets me get my nerdness out, yes. But more than anything, we struggle with this because we don't know a better way to get anyone to care. And so we scare them. And we say things like, if you get hit with something, you're going out of business, buddy. So you better pay up. Now, I know we don't say it in exactly those ways, but that's what's going through our head. Let's be honest with ourselves. And so what we've done is we, as a community, have really spun up a lot of snake oil in how we speak to clients. And to pick on the vendors for a minute, we vendors seize upon that because we know that in order for us to be successful, you have to be successful. And the best way to get you to be successful is to get your clients to just agree to buying your security services, which is bundled with my ish that I'm selling you, and we all win. So the easiest way to get there is to scare them. And so we do. Now let's think about that for a minute. How long do you think scaring someone into action, what kind of staying power does that have? Not a ton of staying power, right? We tried it though before and it does work. But this is as old as Aesop's fables. What did Aesop teach us? The little boy who sees the wolf, who doesn't actually, and he goes and cries out to the town and says, I saw a wolf, and they all come rushing to aid. And he thought it was pretty amazing that he could move an entire town together at his beck and call simply by making up some threat that doesn't exist. Twice he tried it, twice it worked. What do we know about the third time? The third time, there actually was a wolf. He called the town's like, I don't believe you. And if I remember right, the actual Aesop fable, like not the one the kids get anymore, like the ones with real consequences, I think he gets eaten by the wolf. And so it's this story of we sometimes scare people into action, but if we're not careful, we actually do damage to ourselves. Why? Because they say, you told me I had to do all this. I followed you. I trusted you. I listened to you. And now I don't see any of those impacts occurring, and I just have to ask, what were you really selling me? And actually, I think you were selling me instead of helping me. So how do we get through some of that? I think one thing we should not do is we've got to understand this is not, yes, I'm sure there are hackers out there that have like their hoodies up and you can't see their face. I'm sure they exist. But the reality is that's not what we want to portray. Yes, there are bad guys that are out there. Yes, they are hackers. Maybe they wear hoods, maybe they don't. But I don't think they care about that. Most business owners that I talk to are like, look, I don't care about any of that. So I think what we have to understand is we need to talk in a way that doesn't erode trust. We need to talk in a way that avoids hard data and statistics. They're like, I don't know what any of that means. And we've got to start learning to talk to the business owner in a way that they'll understand. I know everyone says that. I'm going to give you examples, real, raw, tangible examples. And by the way, if you want any of these slides, they're more than happy. The team will get them to you, no problem. So here's what we as vendors do. We love to sell ourselves some cybersecurity snake oil. And what we love to do is we love to come up, not just with the 60% fail, but if you've seen statistics you've seen from we vendors before, you're like, I don't know if that's true. Are you sure about that? That seems a little grandiose. Well, if I may, I'm going to go through a little bit of my Hall of Fame. Can I do that for a minute? So I get the same thing you get. I have people reach out on LinkedIn. I go to websites all the time, and I see some of the exact same things. So I'm going to give you some of my favorites where we as vendors are kind of failing and just begging you to give us some attention. So this one came into me, and of course I marked out his name because I don't want you to see it. But he's like, hey, I presume you know about all this stuff. And yes, I do. I happen to start a company that did that stuff. Didn't bother to look any of that up, did he? Anyway, he says, we recently developed a solution to not just disrupt cybercrime, but to stop any security breach blocking any false access, period. I'm like, bro, only the Siths speak in absolutes, and so do you. I don't know how to handle this other than like I was so triggered. This probably took me 10 minutes of just having to unwind from reading this to get back to it. And the guy knows it. Look what he said. He also said, of course we're aware of using absolute terms in this space understandably offends many of you. Like, really, you think? Really? So I'm like, y'all, I told him, I said, this one takes the cake. I'm screenshotting this, and this is going into my next talk, bro. Thank you so much. He messaged me a couple times, gave up. Here's another couple ones. These ones are really great. So anyone know my buddy Jason Slagle from CNWR? He did a keynote with us last year. A great MSP owner up in Toledo. He actually got on national news on this one. So he was dealing with a vendor, and I've pinked them out so you can't see who they are. But this vendor made this egregious claim that they have a zero breach software, and that if you buy their tool, you will have zero breaches. And I'm just like, okay, you want to put your money where your mouth is on that? You want to just describe to me like every possible like outcome and just guarantee they're going to take care of everything? And can I ascribe away all risk to you on this? You raising your hand? Yeah, short of an EMP. That's a great point. Yes. So I love this, right? And so Jason got pretty big into this and followed the LinkedIn thread. He's like, that's not how security works, and you are damaging our entire industry by saying this. The rest of us are talking about building good security with the assumption that something bad is going to happen, so we build resiliency into what we do, and we're not selling like this. And so when you come along and you talk like this, it erodes everything else that we've done. Because now a non-technical decision maker is going to come to me and say, Jason, why did you not just buy the zero breach thing? I'd like 0 breaches rather than 1 breach, please. And that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. So he chased this one, and there was some fighting back and forth, and he ended up getting covered in CRN News. And then here's another one. I pulled this one from a Reddit ad. I thought it was great. I pinked out their name too, but they love us because it's the only solution that stops cyber attacks before they happen. Yes. Powered by like drones and missiles and all this, yes. And yet, same thing, I'm like, okay, I still struggle with this because if that were true, you should be coming out with news article after news article after news article, the stuff that you stopped before it happened, and where is it? So you get my point. We could go on and on and on. And so one thing I want us to understand is that decision makers do not respect us because we're technical. Can we just level set on that for a minute? Most of you, including myself, come out of very technical backgrounds. And so we think because we're technical and because we can speak technical that people will respect and listen to us. And so when I talk to them in such a way, they go, oh, wow, that makes so much sense. I don't even understand the words you're using, but blah, blah, blah. It's not true. More than anything, I think they look at us and they're like, all I hear is nerd speak, and I'm just trying to get through my day. I'm just trying to make my quarter. I'm just trying to make sure that I have enough ability to survive into next year. I'm just trying to figure out X, Y, and Z. So let's do a quick little exercise, shall we? I'd love for 1 or 2 of you to raise your hand and let me know what are some of your goals for next year. December is upon us. I'm sure many of you have set your goals for what next year looks like. If you're an EOS shop, you've probably already done all of that. I'd love to hear from a couple of you. What are some of your goals for your MSP next year? Yeah. Implement EOS. I like it. What else?
Increase profit.
Increase profit. Awesome. Who else? Okay, fix customer. Okay, so yeah, work on customer service. Love it. What else? Yeah. Lowering costs. Okay, working on margin. Those are all great goals. Yeah.
Get sleep.
Get some sleep. I like it. Okay, last one. Me too, by the way.
Convert or retire legacy accounts.
Okay, cool. Convert or retire legacy accounts. You mean like client accounts? Like okay, great. Those are all awesome. Those are fantastic. Now let me ask you this question. When was the last time you asked your own clients the same question? Good. Whoever my yesterday person was, good. If we're not asking those questions, then we're missing out on huge opportunities, because even you as an MSP owner gave me great answers of what you're working on. And you had noticed none of them came down to like, well, I'm going to spend, 14 hours reassessing my firewall stack, and I'm going to blah, 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 blah. No. So what a lot of this comes down to is making sure that we are speaking eye to eye with our business owners. And I want to talk more about all of that. This is a pervasive problem, not just the MSP space, but the everywhere space. So the CISO podcast series, I don't know if any of you listen to that with David Spark. I do listen to that on occasion. The guy's really great. He'd had an article or an episode just recently where he was talking about that with large CISOs from very large enterprise, and they said the same thing. Like, I just can't get I can't get the business to understand it. And they don't mean to, but they back end into condescending attitudes. Well, you should know this. Well, I've already shared that data with you. Well, you know that we have a security framework that we say we have to follow, and it should be doing this. Well, I told you this 3 months ago. We're really bad at that. We struggle with that. So this is not a you problem. This is an us problem. In the security world, we all struggle with that challenge. Now, I happen to think a lot of MSPs are better at it than most enterprise. So I want to talk about some things that don't work. First of all, reports don't convey value. Can I just say it? Reports should be evidence of work done. Don't hear me misspeak and say that reports are not valuable. Reports are critical. When I was a CISO, I lived and ate and breathed and died on reports. Probably the most important thing for me. But I also recognized I could not hand a report to my client, or really my decision makers, my board, and just expect to walk away and they say, wow, what a great report. I totally understand everything. This all makes sense. Thank you for sharing that with me. You can go away now. Would you like a raise? And your budget seems too low. That never, ever happens. The reason it doesn't happen is because still, even the most simple of reports still require interpretation and analysis. Let me give you an example. Years ago, my nephews were staying with my parents up in North Florida. We went up to go see them. Their kids, my kids, same age. And the oldest of them, he was maybe, call him 10 at the time, something like that, got real lethargic for like 3 days. And we just couldn't figure it out. All we wanted to do was sleep. We thought he had the flu. He wasn't getting better. And what we noticed was like the symptoms were weird. And my mom was starting to get a little nervous. And so she texted Julie, my sister-in-law, and said, hey, I don't know what's going on, but he's just not, it just seems like he's got some issues, and I don't know what it is. And so Julie was like, yeah, no problem, take him to the ER. I didn't know it's been a few days. And so they do, and they take him in. And come to find out within, minutes, they found out he was a type 1 diabetic. We have no history of diabetes in our family. And so we had no idea the symptoms to look for at all. And they could tell within seconds. They're like, whoa. And I don't know his levels, I can't remember, but the levels were astronomically high, right? And so they put him in, in a bed for a couple days, got him restored, all this stuff. And we're just like, the doctor's like, look, he was really bad. It's okay. We see these things happen a lot, especially when it's like the first time with a kid and you've never had experience with it before. He's like, don't feel bad about, you didn't make any mistakes. But he said he gave me a big report, and my wife and my mom, and it was like tons and tons of pages, and said, here's all his blood work. Here's where his levels are. Here's what we need them to be, on and on and on. Getting this big report. I'm like flipping through this thing. And a guy who has no idea what diabetes even is, I said to him, I'm like, hey, doc, thank you for all this stuff, but like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, we've got to keep him for another 3 days before his mom gets in. He's like, oh, got it. He's like, so he sits down and he's like, okay, see this? Circles it. That matters for this. If you see this, go look at that. And then 2 pages over. Okay, you see that one here? This one's super important. And 10 minutes in, he interpreted the data for me in what he thought was a very obvious report. And finally, I understood. That's what you need to be. You're going to have reports that you give to clients. That's great. The best MSPs don't just take generic reports and hand them over. We really customize them. But understand it's your job to spend some time helping them, just like that doctor, say, see this right here? This is what we really want to focus on. See this right here? You're a little under where we typically see other clients. See this right here? We've really seen some improvements over here, and I just want to brag on you and the team for the work you've done over here. Those are the things that, if we're not spending time doing those kinds of things, interpreting the data, we're missing out. Gone are the days you can drop a 500-page network detective report on their desk and say, look at the value I've provided. Boom. And I know I'm stepping on toes because we all used to do that back in the day, and that does not work anymore. Let me give you another example. I come out of banking. And I remember sitting in my board sessions. I got 15 minutes with the board every month. That's it. And I remember sitting down, and I walked in as my CFO was finishing up, and he was like, Texas ratio, this and this and this and this. And our Texas ratio is here. And if we go look at the Texas ratio of our competitors here and here, we see this and this and this. And the board was engaged. They were asking questions, and it was this great conversation. I'm like, how do I get that? I would love to have some ability to have my board engaged with me in the same way instead of going glassy-eyed and falling asleep, both of which happened all the time. So after that board meeting was over, I'm like, I don't even know what the Texas ratio is, but I'm going to go look this sucker up because I'm curious. Well, wouldn't you know it, what the Texas ratio was, it was created by, I think, regulators in the state of Texas. And what it was a very simple ratio. If I remember right, it's anything over 100%, you're a healthy bank. Anything below 100%, you're an at-risk bank. I'm like, well, that's cool. Very simple number. Over 100, good. Under 100, not good. Easy to compare, easy to assemble, easy to talk to, an easy unifying language. Now, wouldn't you know it if someone were to say, yeah, but what's the meat behind that bone? Like, is there something more there? Well, there is. Take a look. You don't have to understand this. I certainly don't. But I went and looked it up. The Texas ratio has some real math to it. There's a ton of data that goes into building the actual ratio. But the vast majority of us plebs is this. I don't need to know the math that went into it. I respect the math that went into it. I just need the outcome. Does that make sense? So I challenge you to think, and I would encourage you the rest of these 2 days to talk with your peers that are here and saying, what kind of outcomes are you sharing with one another? And all the beeps. I don't think it was my computer, so I'm just saying. Maybe it was. Let's see what we got going on here. That's good, juicy stuff. Tina's got good things to say, I think. Oh, Madison too. Madison, aren't you in here? Didn't I just see her a second ago? What's okay? Yeah, she's done. She's like, quit. Okay, so apparently we're not on D&D mode. That's okay. These things happen. So anyway, you see what I'm getting at? And so what I'd encourage you to say, how are we sharing very simple metrics and data with our clients that help them understand how do I stack up? Because one thing I've noticed, and you probably noticed this too, clients will very much move on something when they realize they're not where their peers are. If you're a business owner, you're competitive by some nature. And the last thing you want to do is be in a situation where you're like, yeah, I'm like way behind everyone else. Middle of the pack might be okay. Some clients want to be ahead. Great. But no one wants to be the laggard. So I would encourage you to think about how to do that and borrow from the world of finance because it's pretty effective. So another thing is buying tools does not equal good security maturity. One of the things I used to do in my perch days, if anyone's in here and I talked to you like circa 2018, 2019, you probably heard me ask you this question when I was getting to know you. I still do it sometimes today. I'll say, hey, what's security look like for you? And you'll come back to me like, what do you mean? What does security look like to me? I'm like, open-ended question, intentionally open-ended. What is security for you and your MSP? What do you do? I learned something. MSPs that would come to me and they'd say things like, well, I'm a Cisco Meraki shop, I use XYZ on the EDR, and I do this and this, and they refer to their security specifically at their tools, were almost always immature vendors, or MSPs. Almost always. If an MSP would come to me and they'd say instead, well, what we're doing for security, we've aligned to the CIS framework. We're about through IG1. We've finished all of that internally, and we're moving that direction towards our clients, and we've still got these major things to go, and we're struggling in the area of identity and access management. Oh, I'm talking to a much more mature MSP. I just learned this. It's just something I've picked up over the years. So I'm not saying that just because you refer to your security, specifically your vendors, guarantees you're immature. I'm just saying largely speaking. So with all of that being said, I think about all this, and I think a lot of times we do knee-jerk into, if I can just buy a couple more tools, if I can just get one or two more things coming from a vendor who sells a tool. And we think if we slot in all these tools, then that will mature our ecosystem. And all it does is it destroys our margins if we're not careful. Because I will all day long, I got something to sell you. CyberFox is an awesome product, and you should definitely buy it. But you should buy it because you know you need it from a gap perspective instead of just buying because I told you to buy it. So tools don't equal security, right? And we know this. Go look at, anyone been to RSA or Black Hat? The big enterprise ones? You see what I see? When you walk through the vendor hall, it's vendor hall after vendor hall of endless vendors. And there's no end to this. We talk about this all the time. I talk to VCs pretty much daily. And same thing, VCs are thinking about the same thing. There's so many vendors that are out there, and they agree with me, that we, at some point, they can't all survive. So the beeps agree. Okay, how about another one? Let's get a little more spicy again. I told you it was getting spicy. AI will just fix all these problems, Wes. AI will make all of this better. AI will stop all of the bad things from happening, and we really just get to chill in our luxury condo doing nothing with the rest of our lives. Maybe one day we'll get there. I couldn't hear you over the beeps. What was that? Yes, exactly. They'll just take all of our nerd speak and GPT it so it makes sense to them, which is not a bad idea on their part. Okay, so let's talk about this for a little bit because, first of all, let me disclose where I sit because sometimes we'll make these statements. You're like, yeah, but where does Wes really fall out in AI? I love AI. I use it every day. It's big for a ton of stuff that I do. It's monumentally important. If you're not using it every day, you're definitely a laggard for sure. So get with that training. I think most of you are. It's no shock, right? But I just went to Google and I pulled up the #1 most sponsored, when I typed like AI cybersecurity platform. And this is what came up as the #1 sponsored search, meaning it has nothing to do with good SEO and everything to do with these guys paid the most money for me to click it. So I happily clicked it. Who knows what I paid? $5, $12, $15 for the CPM? I don't know, it doesn't matter, but this is the #1. I know it's kind of hard to see, so you get the slides later, but I was just curious, what does the first click for me result in when I type in AI cybersecurity platform? I marked out the vendor names, so we don't have to worry about that, but secure every app with AI fixes focused on the 5% of risks that matter. First of all, I have no idea what that means. Second of all, again, the absolutes. Every app? Really? I got some old school green screen stuff running around in my bank that's running on AS400, bro. I am not so sure about that statement. So I'm not hating. Maybe this vendor's phenomenal. Maybe, I don't know. But I'm just showing, I think we see the same glut of overreaching promises when it comes to AI as we have with security. In other words, we typically call these buzzwords, right? We typically call these things, we track like that trough of disillusionment, and we're very sky high right now with AI. How many, just show of hands, how many of you would say you're super bullish on AI over the next 5 to 10 years? Meaning no bubble, this thing is only going to continue to blow up and grow. Okay, how about the other end of that? How many of you think we're already in the bubble and it's going to burst any day now, maybe by the end of this talk? Okay. And then how many of you are in the middle undecided? Some degree. Yeah. So you see where I'm coming from with this is we're still in a young world, okay? So, and so are the vendors. So there's plenty of news articles I could pull from, but this one I thought was really great. So this came from Security Drive. AI-powered vulnerability detection will make things worse, not better, former US cyber official warns. And then ironically, yesterday someone sent me an article, I think it was Tom Lawrence, Miss Cass's lesser half, sent me an article the other day, and it's from InfoWorld, and I think if you search cybersecurity has a 966 problem, or I'm sorry, software has a 966 problem. And the whole gist of that article and this one was really interesting. Basically, it's this. AI is phenomenal. I can now write code freely with no limits, as fast and as much as I can. But at the end of the day, who's responsible for the code that's written? The LLM or me? Me. And the more code that I have it write without me checking, the more risk that vulnerabilities get introduced into what I'm producing. And now the great, most important component of software development today is not the writing of software, it's the QA of the software. And a lot of companies have always pushed QA to the side, saying like, that's the last thing, it's not important, not gonna worry about it. My friends, that is very scary to me. One of the things the article, that 966 article had, I thought was really good. They said the most important component of software development in the future is the human's ability to say no. And I thought that was awesome. This ability for us to say, yeah, AI wrote us all this, but we're just not comfortable with this piece of it. So please don't think that AI is just going to remove developers and remove the ability and need to write code and to understand code. What it's going to do is speed things up drastically, but require the human to be in the loop more than ever before. Does that make sense? And I think this is where we're going as an industry. So I would encourage you to read up on that and be well aware. Yeah.
If an LLM gets compromised, it'll be disastrous for globally, probably.
Yeah, and we've already seen abilities to jailbreak inside of an LLM, maybe not the entire model, but very easy for us to, like, for example, someone wrote me a custom GPT that does, I forget what it did, it was some kind of like gamified IR something or other, and I was asking it a bunch of questions on how he wrote it and how it built it, and it literally said, oh, if you'd like me to share with you the Easter egg, I can do that. I'm like, yes, share me the Easter egg, and it told me if you say these things, it'll happily output just a joke kind of thing. And my point is, I thought it was very funny that the Easter egg was meant to be hidden, it was meant to be stumbled upon, and the LLM very happily disclosed it to me just because I was asking it top-end questions, right? Same thing with like HR help desks, like AI-driven help desk. I have nothing to do with anything in that space, so I can kind of speak freely there. I think that's awesome. I think that's a huge part of the future. But we also have to recognize there's significant limits and fear to what that can do. When it's seeing all of our tickets and it's making decisions, it's going to happen when people have it give away or say too much, or it makes decisions we're not fully ready for. So again, am I saying don't use an AI-driven help desk? No, I think we should. But we need to wrap our hands around how do we implement that securely. And just another example, that's why I would chat with the thread guys that are here and say, help me understand how we do this in the correct way. So yeah. All right, let me move on just a little bit more, and then I'd love to answer some questions. Oh, I did put that slide up. I forgot that I did it. So there it is. Software development has a 966 problem. So check that out. I just thought that was one of the most intriguing articles I've read in probably a month or two. Really, really good. Came from InfoWorld. So if you just search software development as a 966 problem, it'll come up. There's some of my little notes that I popped into it. Okay, so one example of where we can communicate better. So I didn't want to leave you, as I close, I didn't want to leave you with just only talking about the problem. I'm going to give you some thoughts that can really help you build into a better solution. Okay, and I don't know how much time I have left, so if someone on the Fox team can let me know, just give me a hands up and I'll go through this, okay? So I did this with Ryan Weeks years and years and years ago. This came from Optiv, and Optiv did this really cool little thing about capacity outcomes. And they said, you know, one of the things that we need to understand when we're developing a security strategy is to understand where our capacity outcomes might be. And in all things, it's not a technology problem, it's people, process, and technology altogether, right? Always is. And so what they did was they took people, process, technology, and they mapped it into where capacity outcomes come from. So an example of this, if we sort of work the maze from reverse, take, for example, shelfware. I always use that example. Shelfware is when we may have really good technology in place, but we don't have the people in the process. You ever bought something that came from enterprise, and everyone says it's the best thing that's ever existed, and you don't have the people to accurately run it, and you certainly never built process to handle it correctly because it's so bleeping complex? You know what I'm talking about? That's shelfware. So what you can actually do, this would be a really great session for you to do as a lunch and learn with your team when you come home next week, is to show them this slide and say, can we work through our security stack strategically, just ignoring vendors, strategically where we think our biggest capacity outcomes are today. And then, thanks. And then what I would do is go all the way down to the vendor level, your stack level, and start assessing. This is an easy thing to do to get some traction, get some momentum going. Okay, so next thing, and again, we'll have all the slides for you, don't worry. If you miss a picture, we'll get you all these slides. So one of the problems when we think about building a security strategy is it's a little like going to the farmer's market. If I go to the farmer's market, I'm guaranteed to find some awesome ingredients. I love going to the farmer's market, but I'm not a chef. So I go there and I get overwhelmed quickly. I see all this stuff, all these things to buy, and it's just a bunch of raw goods. And I look at those raw goods, I'm like, you know, if I had the knowledge and capability, I could do something much more effective with this. Well, groceries, they understand this problem. So what do? They start to categorize things in a way that makes more sense. Instead of just walking through, I see a little of this at the farmer's market, a little of that. They're like, oh, aisle 4 has this, aisle 5 has this, aisle 6 has this. Now they're getting so good to where, like, I walk into a Publix and right at the front, they have pre-made stuff. It's like, if you want to make this meal, here's a picture of it, buy this, 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 and this. And you just buy those 4 things and go home. Pretty easy. So we're getting a little better in understanding the stack and what goes into it and how to categorize it, but we're still missing the outcome. Because if I go back a slide, no one wants to buy this. Clients are paying you to do this. This is in the back end of what they're already paying you. This is the shut up nerd, don't talk to me about this. What they're paying for is this, a good experience. Think about this with a restaurant analogy. If I go to a great restaurant, very rarely do I say, bring the chef over and give me a 45-minute spiel on how you cooked what you made and what it went into it, blah, blah. I'm just like, thank the chef for an awesome meal. That's what I want. At the end of the day, what your clients want is an awesome experience. They want to be able to continue to do what they want to do, to be able to make money, to save money, to grow, all of these things without any inhibitions. That's what they want, and it's our job to be able to deliver that. So when you think about how do I start to deliver this, we do need to think about the stack itself. And so take the Cyber Defense Matrix. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but this you can see at cyberdefensematrix.com. It's from a friend of mine, Sunil Yu. He basically took the NIST cybersecurity framework, and he mapped it into a matrix so we can start building not just our tools, but our processes into it and start to understand what do we have, where are our gaps, And there's much more I could say about all this. I don't have time, but basically the short of it is we slide right into detection, response, and recovery. Our people burden gets much higher because there's fewer tools that exist. And I can give you examples of this. What I did as an exercise, again, I know it's hard to see, just look at the coverage more than anything. I took CIS Control 1 and I mapped it into the cybersecurity framework. So if I were to follow implementation group 1 of CIS, and only that, notice it does a lot of stuff, but mostly in the protect function. I got a lot of missing pieces. So then I said, well, let's take all three. Let's take CIS 1, 2, implementation groups 1, 2, and 3, and let's jam them all in, see what we get. Now we have a lot more coverage, we still have gaps. So one of the things that's important to understand is even if I follow a security framework, I'm still going to have gaps in certain areas that only people and only process can address, meaning that you cannot buy your way out of a security problem. I think more people need to understand that. Because they think I bought security, therefore I'm good, I don't have anything to worry about, and then something hits and you're unready to handle it. I don't have time to talk about this, but a really good vendor friend of MSP friend of mine, Andrew Zaccoli, built this and shared it with me, and he gave me permission to share it with y'all. He literally took, and you can, again, get screenshots of this from the slides, it's open source. He literally took his entire cybersecurity stack, everything that he does, and he mapped it in the cyber defense matrix, and he uses this to show clients. There's a lot more to say about that. Come pull me away after, and I'll get it for you. So as we kind of close up, the truth is your people, your decision makers, they just do not care about cyber until they care. And we have to recognize that. I care about it because it's fun, it's cool, it's modern, it's never changing, or it's ever changing. I wish. It's ever changing. Little different. They don't. What makes them care is some kind of external event that gets them to move on it. And so the way some of those events are, a couple things I want to share is, these right here. I'm probably finished on these two things. I knew I had more time. Is I think the way you get a client to care is two things. First thing is this right here. I don't know jack all about sports ball. Oh, I have 20 minutes? Oh my gosh, then we don't have time for questions. Okay, then I will go a little. I thought she said 5 minutes. Okay, so I want to talk about this. This is so valuable. I don't know jack about basketball. I don't know who this guy is. I know it's Miami Heat, I think, and I know he's about to put the ball in the shooty hoop. So points are coming, and that dude is above the rim. Do you see that? I don't know how a human can jump that high, but he can jump that high. No one is going to stop him from putting that ball in the shooty hoop. That much I know about sports ball. How many of you do this with your clients? I don't mean like go out and shoot hoops with them. Maybe you ought to. Maybe I ought to. What I mean is this. How often do you say, hey, Miss Client, one of the things that I know we haven't done a really good job of in the past couple of years, maybe forever, is sitting down and actually asking you that question of, hey, where's your business going? What are you trying to accomplish? And what's mission critical for you next year? Now, expect when you ask that question, they might look at you and be like, what are you talking about, nerd? You've never asked me that question before. Like, stop. It's weird. You got to get over that. You just have to. And say, no, I know. But one of the things we're really working on ourselves is to make sure we're good students of our clients. So bear with me. What's important for y'all? And you'll hear all kinds of things if you really get them to open up. Some of the same things you just said. We're really working on gross margin. Wow. I would love to be able to talk with you about your technology strategy and do a full comprehensive review of what we're offering and also what some of your external spend is elsewhere. Can we help you with that? What business owner is going to say no to that after they just told you that gross margin and efficiency was really important for them? What if they say, I'm 65, really enjoy what I'm doing, but my son Bucky is getting ready to take over. Old Bucky, I don't know where Bucky just came from, but it came into my mind. Old Bucky is going to take over. Man, that's awesome. Can I get 10 minutes with Bucky? Can I just take him out to lunch? I just want to know, what's he thinking about? Where's he wanting to go with the business? As we're seeing businesses age younger by more and more of boomers and elder Gen X's walk out of the business, we see this in the MSP space too, don't we? As we see more and more of that happening, don't be shocked when they sit down with you and they say, well, now that dad or mom's out of the room, look, they did it this way, we're doing it this way. And if you haven't had that conversation with them, how do they view you? From the old school. Yep. So all it takes is one conversation, be like, this is amazing. You know, I've been trying to get with your dad and talk about some of this stuff for a long time. This is the best thing ever. Can we work with you next time we meet? Can we sit down and have just a great strategy session and just talk through some of this? What a great, great conversation to have. So please don't be afraid of those kind of offense questions. Go on offense with them. Get them to go on offense and then join with them in the discussion. Now there's a second component that every conversation needs to have, and it's the defensive component. Same thing. I don't know what's going on here. All I know is the guy on the right is not letting the other guy put the ball in the shooty hoop. I don't know if it's illegal. I don't know if that's like a foul or whatever, but I know for sure that ball is not going in the shooty hoop. One of the other things that we have to do is we also have to have this conversation with the client. Hey, Miss Client, now that I understand where you're going and we've built a strategy for it and we're aligned to what you're wanting to do, one of the things that I'm responsible for is to make sure that we help you eliminate the things that will prevent you from getting there. So I don't have all that together now, but next time we meet, can I present to you sort of a defensive strategy that we can put in place to make sure we're implementing in the right way so that you can accomplish your goals? I want to squash those things that would get in your way. Who says no to that? They might not say yes to the budget right out of the gate, but you see how we open up the conversation? My job is to make sure we help you align to that. I want to get you where you're going. I want to stop the things that will prevent you from getting there. So start having those conversations. If you're not the VCIO lead, if you have a team of VCIOs and you're hearing me like, dude, Wes, I got it, we're good. I would encourage you to go look at your teams. How are we doing on that? And you know there's little things you can look at to see how your team is doing with this. I'll give you one example. If I were running an MSP and I were putting KPIs around my VCIOs, one of the major KPIs I would have is this. How often, what percentage do my clients meet with my VCIO in the QBR? My goal would be 100%. Now, if they're 90%, that might be within range and it's okay. But the reason I would have that is because it tells me, does the client actually want to meet with us? Next KPI I would have is list the title for that person that met in the QBR, or whatever you call your QBR. If it's not a CEO or a VP of Ops or somebody that's a decision maker, you got a problem. You now have a VCIO that's been cordoned off to an office manager, a gatekeeper. That would be a major KPI I would track. Those two, there's more, but those two alone would be super valuable because it lets you understand, are we actually speaking value the way we think we are, or are we not? If they're gatekeeping you and they're shoving you off for another day, you have problems. And to me, that would be a high-risk client, for sure. That make sense? And maybe they should be a high-risk client, right? Maybe they're just not good for you. That's a whole different story. Okay, so 3 big things that matter as we kind of finish up. I'm going to save time for questions. Regulations, we know this. Where regs have gone, oh my gosh, the past 2 years, Jennifer in the back can attest to this. I think we've seen more regulatory change over the past 2 to 3 years than ever before in the industry. I'm not sure it will keep pace, but it probably will. Expect that to continue and more. Supply chain. How many of you have had a client of yours come up to you and say, hey, we have to do this thing? And you say, why? And they say, because my client is making me do this thing if I want to keep the contract. Yep. So this is now happening. It's a good thing, not a bad thing. But again, another KPI I would have is, are we getting in front of those things? Like, how many times does the client bring up out of the blue and we missed the opportunity? Now, I get it. Sometimes we just had the QBR, and then a month later they get asked the question. That's totally fine. But if we're consistently having the client come up saying, solve this for me, solve this for me, solve this for me, we are now order takers, and that's a dangerous spot to be in. Versus we're constantly asking the question, we know where they're going, all of that good stuff. All right, and then lastly, cyber insurance. Don't have time to talk about that, but cyber insurance, we all know, one of the biggest drivers for where we're going. Okay? So if you can get a handle on all of those things, I think you can really start to move on in a much better way. All right, so I'm going to save some time for questions because I just want to make sure we do that. I'd love to hear any thoughts, questions, ideas, challenges you have. We have a mic that we're going to run around. Is it just one mic? Okay. 2 mics. Great. So we'll be running the mics around. And it is important so that we can get that picked up on audio. So yes, sir. We'll start with you.
Well, I'm just going to go on this slide that you've got right here. Like,
yep.
These last two, they're fantastic because especially if you've addressed those during the QBRs or whatever you want to call them, those are the times where it's like, remember what I said during the QBR that you were missing this, you had a gap here.
Yep.
Now your client or now your insurance provider is asking you to provide evidence that you're doing these
Right.
things, right? So,
Love that. Yep. And to maybe just quick follow on to that, while we get another question maybe over here, is I am so bullish for MSPs in the future. Because of all of those things, because of what AI is doing, like we are, I do think managed service is going to start to erode in favor of strategy, in favor of consulting, and in favor of project revenue. Don't hear me say managed service is going away. Hear me say you are becoming the great consultancy layer for the SMB that cannot do things on their own. And that is awesome. That is so, so, so awesome. So if you're not ready for that, not planning for that, I would encourage you to. You got a question over here, was it? Anyone else have a question? Or any thoughts, comments? You want to, yeah.
I think, excuse me, I think a proactive approach is what you're talking about here. And don't be on the back end of the client, but in the front end of the client and have the vision before the client has
Right.
the need, right?
Right.
I think that's where we're going here.
Yep, is to say we want to be that's right. To say we want to be proactive, but then look and say how do we know we're proactive? What are those KPIs? What are those measurable tangibles that we look at to know that we are actually being proactive? I love it. Yeah.
On the cyber insurance side, how many people are selling cyber insurance to their customers and then delivering the service that guarantees it?
Are you asking for like show of hands, or you just might?
Yeah, show of hands or your perspective on it.
Well, let's do show of hands. How many of you are active? Let's start this way. How many of you are actively engaged in QBR types of conversations that include cyber insurance? Awesome, awesome, awesome. I would imagine most of you are not quote unquote selling it, because to sell it you have to be an agent, right? You have to have some kind of licensure to be able to do that, but it doesn't mean that you can't bring the agent into the discussion and work with them. Does that answer the question, or you have more on it?
Becoming a cyber insurance provider.
Aha. So is anyone thinking? So I do know a couple MSPs. Dustin Bolander out of Beltex, out of Austin, Texas. What's that? Dustin cheats. I can't confirm nor deny. I like Dustin. He's awesome. But yes, some are doing this, right? And they've actually spun up some type of insurance agency to be able to do that as well. And it's not necessarily a bad idea, right? I mean, you're going to have to look and say, is it within our wheelhouse? Can we expand into it? Is it something we want to do? Yeah, he made a comment, so now you got to speak to it.
To your comment regarding
Oh,
cyber
sorry, we'll get you in a minute. Yeah, sorry.
To his comment regarding cyber insurance, in our business model, we have our advisory function, and what we've done is partner with insurers or brokers in our business model, and with our tool stack, we use it as a benchmark to pre-qualify persons for cyber insurance. And we found, especially in the mining sector, which is a part of our demographic, that it allows them, especially when they're, I'd say, raising money or ready to be listed on the TSX or so forth, it's allowed them to show that they have one-stop provider. So we sit at the general contractor level as their MSP, but we also provide the backfill for their cyber insurance and cybersecurity services.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And that puts you at such a strategically important relationship with that client, because to your point, in order to get on TRX and all these other things they want to do, that's mission critical, which makes you mission critical. Love that. Love that. All right.
So I love Dustin. You should actually look him up, but he does cheat. So going back to you, we actually have several insurance providers in our area. I live in Alabama, in our area that have decided to become MSPs. And that's a dangerous line, because if you're selling it and servicing it,
right, then
you have a vested interest if anything happens to cover it up, right? And so I would steer clear, and there's actually an cyber insurance company that also does remediation, and it is MSP as well, and they're horrible for the exact same reason. And so, kind of if you're contemplating that, personally, I would steer clear of that, because you then blur the line of responsibility, and if it goes to court, that's a hard defense to make.
Yeah, that's a great point. That whole separation of responsibility has been a classic issue in cybersecurity from day one. And you are right, the carriers are doing this. More and more of them are coming in and undercutting you to say, we can offer you MDR, we can offer you all of these other things. You'll need the MSP for it. And of course, they're well incentivized to offer it, because they want their hands on the wheel on the left side of the incident as well. So, yeah, a bunch of hands have gone up. I'll let y'all get to be the magic mic pickers. I'll let you pick. Yeah.
Hey, Wes, you referred briefly to the loop that's developing where we're becoming consultants.
Yep.
again, essentially, because I started in '90, doing that for about 5 years. Although consulting was much simpler back then. Don't buy your stuff at yard sales. Use a password on your server for the admin account.
Right.
It's a little more complicated now, and so are the folks we work for. Nobody ever talks about the underlying problem, in my mind, to all of this, which is the operational maturity around IT of your clientele. No matter how much money they have and how successful they are, if they see IT, or in particular securing it, as an impediment, that's the issue. It doesn't matter what it costs to do it, or even the tool stack for a lot of us, but MFA was a 3-year battle for us, and it's such a ridiculous thing. And I tried all the analogies, do you put a seatbelt on? That's good, because if you crash, you could hurt yourself or die. Your whole business needs a seatbelt. All this stuff. What hasn't changed is the human element. People don't keep up with the acceleration of risk.
Right.
So there's a new thing that we can do, I think, as consultants, and that is to lead these folks to the reality that it is important not just to seek advice, but to follow it when it comes to securing your operations.
Right. Yep. It's well said. Well said. Yeah.
I was just going to comment on the insurance question really quick. I'm also seeing insurance providers starting to require access or agents installed in environments so that they can monitor for business email compromise and other access. And to me, that's also like really scary to start having insurance have access. And some of them are requiring it, or just saying, hey, do this and we'll drop your premium to the point where clients can't refuse it. So opening it up here for future conversations, and Wes, if you have any input on that, but that's something we're seeing more and more from various vendors.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that. I hear that all the time, right? And they insurance companies they're data actuators. They legalize gambling based on data is what the insurance industry really is. So they know the more data we have, the more intelligent decision we make. And the ethical question, of course, comes in of how much data is too much, and at what point do I have to limit it? I agree. That's a bigger discussion, but an important one. All right, time for one last question.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe 2 more questions.
Great. Yeah, I have kind of a comment and a question combination. So my comment is, you mentioned how, MSPs, like you're bullish on MSPs because there's this, area where it's like we can function more of as a consultancy as well as a managed service. And I just wanted to make the comment that we're seeing that ourselves where like we work with a lot of registered investment advisors, right, that have like certain compliance requirements and like all this stuff. And a lot of times the smaller firms don't have an in-house like compliance officer, and so they'll outsource that to a company like ACA Aponics or Drawbridge or several of these, right? And so we've actually been able to build really interesting partnerships with some of those companies where they will almost in a way like qualify leads for us, because they will be working with one of these small companies and say, oh, you need to meet these requirements. Hey, let me introduce you to Pliancy, who can help you meet these regulations. So that's really cool. But I'm curious if you're seeing that in other industries as well, where it's like, I think in the past there was maybe this like sense of like, oh, if a client of mine is reaching out to this other third-party consultancy that's not me, that was almost like scary. Like, oh, are they gonna like step into my lane? Like, are they the printer vendor that's gonna become an MSP and then like take this client from me? But are you kind of seeing like, I feel like almost like there's a step away from that, where it's like clients are engaging not just with an MSP, but like with other groups where it's like, it may potentially seem like, oh, that's a conflict, but it's like, actually it could be a really great partnership where, each have like a defined role and a defined lane, with the MSP being the consultant that's basically facilitating the conversation across the groups. Is that something that you're seeing?
I am seeing that on the reg, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, right? Going back to your point of staying in your lane, knowing what you do really well, knowing what your ICP is, serving it well, and then working with others that can can help build the strategy for everything else they need is awesome. I'll give you one example. This is a little bit different, but I was talking to MSP at the last CyberFox Summit, and they said, we lost 3 of our best employees. We're larger MSP, over 100 employees. He said, we lost 3 of our best employees over the past year, and it's really hurt us. He said, we just knew we couldn't compete with enterprise pricing. We knew we couldn't make the salary work. So we let them go. It kind of stunk. He goes, the thing we learned though, best thing ever, all 3 of them have brought our MSP into business with the new client they landed with, or the new company they landed with. And I'm like, really? Tell me more. He said, well, we've spent all these years investing in our people, and helping them out. And now that they've left, the first thing they want to do is they say, you know, my MSP that I used to work for does a great job of that. Let's bring them in. He's like, it really opened our eyes to say, we should be as much networking and working with many others as we can and helping them because they're going to help us back, and even in situations like that. So I am seeing more of that, and I think it's a very, very smart thing to do. I think all MSPs should be lining up some of those alliances of who can we work with and refer to you, knowing that a good partner will refer back, right? So I think that's awesome. I think we're out of time, but thank you so much. I'll be around all day today and tomorrow, so I'd love to chat with you more if you have other questions, and thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks, Wes.